here are people who could potentially be a threat, and here are people who are friends, right? Where's my, I like using color. So we'll do the threat with red eyes, right? And we'll do the friend in green. It's pretty obvious. Okay. So in a natural state of affairs, right? In a natural state of affairs, we are drawn to our friends, right? In a natural state of affairs, we are drawn to our friends. In a natural state of affairs, we are sort of hostile. We're hostile to our enemies, right? In an unnatural state of affairs, obviously, in an unnatural state of affairs, right? In an unnatural state of affairs, we don't make distinctions between friends and enemies. Right? In an unnatural state of affairs, we treat our friends exactly the same way we treat our enemies. And this is ridiculous, right? For Nietzsche, I mean, what does that mean? It doesn't make any sense, right? No. People who are friendly to me, I'll be friendly to you. People who are maniacal and out to hurt me, well, I'm going to hurt you before you hurt me. That's a natural state of affairs. So, I mean, pretty obvious. He talks about this before. I'm not going to beat a horse to death, but I don't know how that beating a horse to death phrase came about. That's such an odd thing to say. Everywhere, last line at the bottom of page 33 in the notes, everywhere God is inserted and utility withdrawn. That's the important point, and I underlined it, right? Everywhere God is inserted and utility is withdrawn. Everywhere the real origin of morality is denied. The veneration of nature, which lies precisely in the recognition of any natural morality, is destroyed at its roots. And this is note 204. Right? So obviously what's being said here, relatively new. Most of it is sort of a rehash, which we understand, you know, the anti-biological and so on. The new bit is that utility is withdrawn. Right? In this Christian moral ethic, utility is withdrawn. So that's the sort of important point. Within M-O-R-A-L-I, the Christian morality, utility. Right? We lose utility. Right? We go counter to that which would seek to enhance self-preservation. Right? The whole point isn't about self-preservation. Utility, natural utility, seeks to increase and maximize self-preservation. Christian morality, according to Nietzsche, seeks to minimize self-preservation. Hence, you can make the claim, I'm not going to make the claim, but you could make the claim, there would be some legitimacy in making the claim, that Christian moral ethic, Christian morality is, I wouldn't go so far as saying death worship, but there's a proclivity towards destruction, right? If you follow the logic, there's a proclivity towards destruction. This is, you know, and I know this is an incendiary remark, right? But this is not me, this is Nietzsche. There is a destructive sort of morbidity inherent in the moral ethic. How did I get to that point? I got to that point through a recognition that utility is extracted, removed from the natural ethic. The natural ethic is one that seeks to maximize self-preservation. So when someone threatens my life, when someone threatens me, I seek to maximize self-preservation by destroying the threat. The Christian moral ethic says turn the other cheek. Insofar as I turn the other cheek, I heighten my suffering. Obviously, we know the implications of that. I heighten the possibility of my demise, and I motivate the sadist, all of which contributes to the possibility that I'm going to be destroyed and killed and suffered and in pain and so on and so forth, and maximizes all of those things, which ultimately culminate in death. Hence, you can make the argument that the Christian moral ethic is inherently a morbid, destructive force, if you will. Now, that's not me. The analysis is me, but you know, that is an implication of it's a pretty hard. It's probably the worst critique you could probably give, but that is an implication of the extraction of utility from the natural process. I mean, it is. It's undeniable. So, but I do recognize that that claim is a pretty heavy claim, and in no sense am I saying that I believe that at all. But it is it is a pretty intense claim. Okay, so moving along. Christianity as a socialist doctrine, right? Oh, this is a good segue into what I just said, right? Was Nietzsche anti-Semitic? I don't really care. I'm more interested in the concepts. If he was, I don't discuss the anti-Semitic parts. Was he anti-socialist? Absolutely. Right? He didn't believe in socialism at all. So people that say, you know, he would have supported and, you know, all of the groundwork was there for the National Socialist Party, they took from Nietzsche what they would. You can pervert any text, but Nietzsche did not in any sense condone or support the idea of socialism. And we're about to talk about his interpretation that Christianity was sort of along the lines of this perverted socialist doctrine, right? So Christianity as socialist doctrine. Alright, so Christianity socialist doctrine. First point, number one. This is a quote from Note 209. I think this is a pretty important quote as well. Quote, "The gospel, the news that a gateway to happiness," right? The news that a gateway to happiness stands open for the poor and lonely. That all one has to do is free oneself, right? A gateway to happiness comes as a consequence of freeing oneself from the institution, traditions, guardianship of the upper class, the bourgeois. To this extent, the rise of Christianity is nothing more than a typical socialist doctrine. It's sort of hard to critique that, right? I'm not going to analyze it any more than that. I think he was pretty clear. So it fits all of the criteria, right? You have an impoverished class, you have an oppressed class. This oppressed class wants to consolidate among members of the oppressed class in opposition to the upper class in order to attain freedom and happiness. This maps on perfectly to Christianity. Now, if you did want to critique Nietzsche, like I said, I'm not going to be here all day just tooting Nietzsche's horn. If you did want to critique Nietzsche, I would say that, you know, it's sort of quick tangent, super quick tangent, and it's a huge tangent, but it just popped in my head. I watched a documentary on, this is a huge tangent, I watched a documentary on George Lucas as a budding filmmaker. I mean, Lucas is a genius, obviously. And I do a lot of research on my own on Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand. As a matter of fact, I have the book right here. And this book is, this is like one of my favorite books, top 5. This book, I've bled through this book. Anyway, so, and they have, you know, Anakin Skywalker on the front, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, so I like film stuff in that regard. So, so I'm watching this documentary on George Lucas, again, tangent, and Lucas, he wanted to go indie. He wanted to be independent, right? So he started his company, Lucasfilms. I don't know if he started it initially, but you know, Star Wars becomes the epic sci-fi, you know, the cornerstone to all of the geek community and the nerd community's lives, you know, and now he's become this mammoth. Lucasfilms is a behemoth, right? It's a behemoth. The technology that they produce, the contributions that they made, behemoth. In a sense, he has become the very thing that he was fighting against, right? He started off as an independent filmmaker, not wanting to co-opt his ideas to the institution, the man, the upper class, the bourgeois, and he created